think there's a big difference in comparing someone to Hitler on the one hand, which I don't do. I think that's a big mistake. And I said that in the speech that you're referring to. That's a unique form of evil that should not ever be compared to anything. But we are not living up to our responsibility to our Constitution if we don't remain alert to warning signs that we know from history, not only from the Third Reich, but from a whole series of strongman dictators. When they start trying to tell people what to think, when they start trying to expand their power so that they push the Congress around, push the judiciary around, and try to consolidate dictatorship, the first steps on that road are ones that we should see as warning signs.
I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate.
So Bill just sat down with none other than Al Gore. Yes, Clinton's longtime vice president, and dropped a few of his signature truth bombs. The unapologetic comedian went after the former VP for his latest episode of Trump derangement syndrome. And let's just say, the internet didn't handle it well. As always, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more of these brutally honest takedowns.
We've already seen, by the way, how populist authoritarian leaders have used migrants as scapegoats and have fanned the fires of xenophobia to fuel their own rise to power. And power seeking is what this is all about. Our Constitution, written by our founders, is intended to protect us against a threat identical to Donald Trump.
I played that clip to give you some context for Bill Maher's verbal takedown, a moment that perfectly captured just how out of touch the modern left has become. Despite being handed a harsh electoral reality check, they still haven't learned their lesson. After years of vilifying Trump and losing key elections because of it, they remain fixated on portraying him as the ultimate villain in their never-ending political drama. And just days after Bill delivered that fiery monologue, Al Gore walked straight into the hot seat. Bill Maher's show, armed with the same worn-out talking points. But instead of cheers, he got a hard dose of truth. Maher didn't sugarcoat anything, didn't let him off the hook. He confronted him directly, because at some point, someone on the left needs to say it. Enough with the scare tactics. Try winning on real ideas for a change.
See and hear over and over again the assertion of complete inaccuracies that Ukraine is responsible for starting the war with Russia. There's so many of them, and they keep asserting these things, expecting us to believe that the climate crisis is a hoax invented by the Chinese, that windmills cause cancer, that coal is clean. And they try to assert with the force of power their own special version of alternative fact.
Al Gore, bless his heart, clearly hadn't gotten the memo. He must have thought he was stepping onto the Bill Maher show circa 2005, the version that ran on liberal applause lines and DNC talking points. But Maher's platform has evolved, much to the frustration of the progressive echo chamber. It's no longer a safe zone for recycled partisan messaging. So Gore did what many out-of-touch legacy politicians do. He launched into a familiar monologue filled with the usual anti-Trump themes. Climate change panic? Check. Trump's wind turbines cause health issues? Check. And of course, he couldn't resist invoking the extreme comparisons, because subtlety apparently is a lost art. He expected Maher to nod along like a cable news host, but instead, he got a televised dose of reality. Maher didn't just push back. He practically rolled his eyes into another dimension. Because while Gore was busy reading from an outdated script, Maher was busy delivering hard truths, ones that make both sides squirm.
I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate.
Bill Maher didn't hold back. He called out Al Gore right then and there, cutting through the usual self-righteous noise with his trademark bluntness. Maher looked Gore in the eye and reminded him, in no uncertain terms, that the golden era of media-fueled hysteria about Trump is long over. The days when you could simply shout fascist and win the argument. Those are gone. Maher told Gore that millions of Americans voted for Trump, not because they're extremists, but because they're tired of the smug, elitist narratives pushed by people just like him. Maher made it clear. Painting half the country as villains isn't just dishonest, it's lazy. And worse, it's politically self-destructive. His point? You don't win hearts and minds by labeling your opponents as evil. You only deepen the divide. If Democrats want to stay relevant, they need to stop lecturing and start listening. The same outrage tactics that worked in 2016 don't work anymore. Voters want facts, not fear. Honesty, not hysteria. And Maher made sure Gore got that message, loud and clear. But Maher wasn't done yet.
People hate you so much, and when they think you hate them so much, even the money goes out the window.
Well,
Not that I think Trump is going to survive if he takes the economy down, but this idea that, well, just to take a random example, you can't even break bread with them. We hate you so much that
Well,
you're not even,
look, I know that-
deplorable and you're not worth having dinner with.
I know that you've been attacked on this, and I
What?
want to. Yeah.
Here, Maher wasn't just debating Al Gore, he was warming him, almost pleading. He urged Gore to step away from the self-defeating habit of vilifying and alienating every American who voted for Trump. Because let's be honest, this us versus them mindset isn't just divisive, it's political malpractice. Maher made it crystal clear. Keep demonizing half the country, and it won't just hurt the Democrats' election chances. It'll drive the country even further apart. Remember when some on the left proudly claimed they'd never speak to a Trump voter again? That even Thanksgiving dinners would be split along political lines. How'd that strategy work out? Spoiler, it didn't. The Democrats went on to suffer one of their most embarrassing electoral losses in recent memory. Why? Because lecturing voters isn't a strategy. It's a tantrum. And voters don't reward tantrums. They walk away. But Maher wasn't done yet. He was just getting ready to deliver his strongest critique.
We're in the news this week for invoking Nazis.
Well, I didn't do what J.D. Vance did and call Trump America's Hitler when he did that a few years ago. I think there's a
Well,
big...
what he actually said was, I think about Trump a lot, and he could be an asshole just like Nixon, or he could be America's Hitler.
Oh, that's
and
accurate,
I remember
yeah.
thinking, oh, so the good option is that he's just an asshole like Nixon.
This false narrative has been circulating for years, and finally, it took someone like Bill Maher to set the record straight. Contrary to what some Democrats and their media allies have claimed, J.D. Vance has never called Donald Trump Hitler. Not once. But that didn't stop the usual voices from twisting his words and using them in a desperate attempt to discredit Trump's presidential campaign. In fact, this kind of misinformation has become a common pattern. Take a partial quote, rip it out of context, and blast it across headlines to fuel a smear campaign. The goal isn't to inform. It's to confuse, distract, and divide. Fortunately, voices like Maher's, who aren't afraid to challenge the narrative, are forcing a long overdue reckoning with the truth. Did Al Gore back down? Let's find out.
I think there's a big difference in comparing someone to Hitler on the one hand, which I don't do. I think that's a big mistake. And I said that in the speech that you're referring to. That's a unique form of evil that should not ever be compared to anything. But we are not living up to our responsibility to our Constitution if we don't remain alert to warning signs that we know from history, not only from the Third Reich, but from a whole series of strongman dictators. When they start trying to tell people what to think, when they start trying to expand their power so that they push the Congress around, push the judiciary around, and try to consolidate dictatorship, the first steps on that road are ones that we should see as warning signs.
So at long last, Al Gore has walked back his comparison of Donald Trump to Hitler. It's about time. Hopefully, the rest of his peers in the Democratic Party and the left-leaning media will follow suit and finally retire that overused, inflammatory talking point. But let's talk about what he said next. Gore warned against a government that tells people what to think. Really? That's quite something coming from someone aligned with an administration that's often been accused of promoting rigid ideological narratives. From limiting dissenting voices on social media to promoting specific viewpoints through public institutions, no recent administration has leaned more heavily into message control than the current one. Whether it's climate, gender, race, or public health policy, the Biden administration has taken strong positions and often shown little patience for differing opinions. The irony? Hard to miss.
David, because you're friends, aren't you? Were you friends? Are you friends?
Yes, of course. I mean, this wasn't, my favorite moment of our friendship, but, look, I don't want to get in too much into that, but I think the minute you play the Hitler card,
That's what I think.
you've lost the argument.
Yes.
And also, I must say, come on, man. Hitler, Nazis, nobody has been harder about and more prescient, I must say, about Donald Trump than me. I don't need to be lectured on who Donald Trump is. Just the fact that I met him in person didn't change that. And the fact that I reported honestly is not a sin either. But, to use the Hitler thing, first of all, I just think it's kind of insulting to 6 million
Yes.
dead Jews.
Bill Maher didn't even spare his longtime friend Larry David when he crossed the line. When Larry jumped on the bandwagon and casually compared Trump to Hitler, Maher didn't let it slide, not even for a second. He called him out directly, saying he completely lost perspective. Maher wasn't angry, he was disappointed. Because when even sharp comedic minds fall back on exaggerated, historically inaccurate comparisons, it weakens real debate and trivializes genuine wrongdoing. Maher reminded Larry, and everyone watching, that calling Trump Hitler doesn't make you sound insightful. It makes you sound disconnected from reality. It's the kind of shortcut that turns off rational voters and undermines serious criticism. If everything is fascism, then nothing is. And if comedy loses its grounding in truth, it becomes just another echo chamber, filled with punchlines no one's laughing at.
I know people can say, well, we're just comparing it in this way. Well, it's an argument you kind of lost just to start it. It's just, look, maybe it's not completely logically fair, but Hitler has really kind of got to stay in his own place. He is the goat of evil, and we're just going to have to, I think, leave it like that. So, did I think that was appropriate? No, but
Bill Maher is absolutely right. Hitler stands alone in a category of evil so immense, so historically unique, that any comparison to modern political figures is not only inaccurate, it's deeply irresponsible. Equating Trump, or anyone else, with Adolf Hitler doesn't elevate the discussion. It diminishes it. It eludes the horror of what Hitler actually did and disrespects the memory of the millions who suffered under his regime. When people casually use Hitler comparisons to make political points, they're not just making a bad analogy, they're weakening the moral weight of history. Maher understands this, and he's not afraid to speak out, even when it challenges his own side. Because comparing political opponents to one of history's most notorious dictators every time there's a disagreement isn't just exaggerated. It's a shortcut that replaces real thinking with a false sense of moral high ground.
the right to this.
Did you know he was going to do it?
Of course not. And people
How
have,
did you find out?
my publicist said, this is going on today and you should know it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Al Gore, Larry David, and plenty of other Democrats still haven't learned the lesson that showed up loud and clear at the ballot box. They're clinging to the same worn-out strategy that already cost them dearly, spinning exaggerated narratives and misleading claims about Donald Trump. It's political deja vu, only this time even more desperate. Instead of recalibrating and reconnecting with everyday voters, they double down on over-the-top rhetoric, hoping that if they shout dictator loud enough, people will forget about real issues like inflation, the border crisis, and collapsing trust in public institutions. Spoiler, they won't. Demonizing Trump might earn a few claps in elite circles, but out in the real world, voters are tuning out. They're not looking for fear tactics, they're looking for solutions. And as long as Democrats keep repeating the same failed playbook, they'll keep getting the same result. Stunned reactions on election night and red maps lighting up the screens on CNN. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more bold commentary like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.